Well, hello everybody to our third live panel of the 2020 NIH Career Symposium. This one's on science administration, a career path near and dear to my heart. We're so excited that you all could be here with us. Please note that I know you guys have tons of questions. Feel free to add all of them into the question box, but I guarantee you we can't get to all of them. So we'll be working with some AI technology to answer those questions, and we'll get to them and we'll post them by next week. And of course, we'll send you all of that. Follow us along on Twitter, NIH_OITE, and don't forget about the Twitter chat later on today at 4 o'clock if you want to participate with that. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to your moderator, Gregory, and good luck, everybody.
Hello, my name is Gregory Adams. I'm a postdoc at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute at the National Institutes of Health. I'm privileged today to sit virtually and serve as a moderator with a panel of scientific administrators for the Career Symposium today. How are you all today, panelists?
Excellent.
Doing well, thanks.
Doing great.
Doing well.
Good. Well, first I'd like to thank you guys for participating in our Career Symposium. Would you like to introduce yourselves? We can start with you, Chris.
Sure. My name is Chris Case. I work for Lattice Biomedical Research, and I'm a manager of scientific programs for the Vaccine Clinical Materials Program.
All right. Whichever lady want to go next.
I could go. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shakira Nelson. I'm a senior scientific program administrator at the American Association for Cancer Research in Philadelphia, and I'm also a former fellow at NCI. So I'm happy to be here today.
Hi, I'm Miley Henson. I'm a research development associate at the Duke University Office of Research Development, and I too am a former fellow from National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences in Research Triangle Park.
And I'm Kristen Kandrachuk. I'm a research facilitator and business development officer at the University of Manitoba in Canada. And I was a former fellow in the Laboratory of Parasitic Diseases in NIAID.
All right, good. So we'll have a brief discussion. We don't have a whole lot of time, so questions that are asked from myself as well as from the webinar attendees, we would request for you guys to be brief but be as concise as you can. Is that an echo you guys are hearing? Oh, okay, that's just me. All right, so my first question for each one of you, essentially you told me a little bit about yourself, but I would like to know, with your position, what are your responsibilities and what was your path or your motivation to become who you are today? We can start with you, Christian.
So I'm a research, as I said, I'm a research facilitator and business development officer. And so my role here at the university is to work directly with researchers, academic researchers, in developing both their grant proposals as well as partnerships, whether those are internal collaborations or external partnerships with industry or with government. And so it's really a multifaceted job. And I also work in the dean's office. And so in that respect, I advise on a lot of strategic initiatives for the entire Faculty of Science, which encompasses 7 departments, everything from math and stats and physics to microbiology and biological sciences. So I get a very broad picture of science, and again have in very broadly defined roles, but a lot of it does involve grant development and review with academics. Oh, I guess, and my motivation for getting into this type of career was that I really am more driven by getting a bigger picture of science and medicine rather than conducting research in a lab on a very narrowly defined topic. And so my current job, I'm really exposed to such a wide variety of different topics and work with people on everything from astrophysics to my own background, which was in infectious disease research. And I'd say the most interesting thing to see is with the COVID pandemic, everyone's trying to pivot their research. And so I am, working with people who are subatomic physicists trying to solve COVID-related problems.
Okay, Shakira.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start off with my motivations for what led me to the area I work in now. And it was basically, I wanted to take a holistic approach to pushing the field of science forward. And I felt that by going more into science administration, I could have a little bit more power and a little bit more control over the topics that are discussed, the programs that are put together, the speakers we invite, and really showcase some of the nuanced parts of science as well as some of the bigger parts, but need a little bit more finesse in terms of diversifying the topics, diversifying speakers, things like that. In terms of what I do every day, a lot of my work focuses on keeping up with current science and figuring out what are the best directions for the organization to move in, to be a leader in what we present to our members and to scientists out there. What programs are they looking for? What topics are coming up in science that have some really terrific results that need to be shared? And just making sure that science is fresh and science is new, and we're bringing new people to the table. I also have a lot of responsibilities in terms of managing small teams, managing medium-sized teams. We also do grant writing, which it's funny, I moved away from academia because I didn't think I'd be a very good grant writer, and that was something that I didn't want to be a major part of my career growth. And so even within science administration, there's still some grant writing. My job doesn't rely on the results of the grants as much, but I still need to have the skills that I picked up as a grad student and as a postdoc for grant writing, creating good stories, putting together good grant packages. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers the day-to-day minutia of what I do.
Okay, Miley.
So similar to Shakira and Kristen, I also work on grant proposals, but that's actually a very large portion of my job. So I mentioned, so I'm a research development associate at Duke in the School of Medicine. Research development itself is a fairly young and fast-growing field, but it's very service-oriented. We support faculty across the School of Medicine, competing in this very, very incredibly narrow funding landscape, leading teams through their grant opportunities, developing proposals, study designs, and trying to get the biggest picture science out there. So in particular, I work with faculty to develop the NIH complex grant proposal. These are for the large program projects and centers and things like that. Specifically, I provide proposal management, writing support, comprehensive editorial review, and advise faculty teams on their content, on the organization, the presentation, compliance issues. And then in addition, within my office, I'm developing onboarding resources and assisting with grant writing workshops. So by and large, my job encompasses working with teams to put together the proposals and see them through to submission.
Okay, and Chris?
Yes, I can. A lot of overlap with what the other panelists have indicated so far. Maybe with a little bit of a nuance difference. So I'm more in the contract side, whereas it sounds like a lot of the other panelists are involved with grant writing to a large extent. Most of my work deals with obtaining government contracts, which is different from grants, and then also distributing funds to external resources through subcontracts. So my Leidos Biomedical Research is a prime contractor to the federal government, and we serve mainly the Vaccine Research Center at NIAID and do phase 1 clinical material production for them. We also help to an extent with preclinical studies and basic research. So I oversee for our group putting together responses to government requests for proposals. So we have several contracts with the government for different targets like TB, malaria, HIV, flu, soon COVID. And our group manufactures clinical materials, but then we also oversee preclinical testing of those materials, safety studies on vaccines, basic research to identify new and novel candidates for vaccines. And part of what I oversee there is writing up statements of work, finding vendors who can do that type of work that may not be part of our core competency, evaluating their proposals, and then managing their activity as a subcontractor to us. So similar to what some of the other panelists have said, I chose this field because I like the idea of contributing to the bigger picture, being able to work on many different topics. I think when I fill out my timesheet today, I'm going to have a TB, malaria, flu, HIV, COVID all in a day's work. So you get to jump around and really get exposed to many different things. It's very fast paced and it just keeps you very stimulated.
Wow. So all of your jobs sound very interesting, sound very, you have a lot of responsibilities. And I'm sure that you had to learn how to juggle and prepare yourself to do your job. One question I have is, did you have any mentors to help coach you along the way to become, in your perspective, career path? Anyone can start. We can just have a discussion. I don't have to call on anyone, just anyone want to start.
Yeah, I could give a quick response. So I've had mentors that I have relied upon since undergrad, but I had a really great mentor during my postdoc at NCI who was very motivating in helping me to navigate the job market, given that what I wanted to do didn't necessarily fall in line with academia or government. And so she helped me to just boost my networking. She helped me to think outside the box. And she actually provided a lot of motivation and support to me when I was applying to jobs and helping me to get over, I guess, imposter syndrome or feelings that I shouldn't waste my time in applying to this because I wasn't going to get selected. She played a major role in helping me to just get past all the negativity and just put my name out there and see what happens. So I think her mentorship really played a key role for me throughout my postdoc.
I can just in here. I've also had many mentors and many mentees from across all kinds of disciplines in life. I try to touch base with them when I can, but find it's a little more challenging nowadays to keep that up. But two in particular stand out for me, and they were both at NIEHS when I was finishing up my postdoc. Denise Saunders and Tammy Collins, who really helped me figure out that you have to do a lot of introspection to figure out what you want to do. If you're not going in the typical career path of, faculty, tenure track, academia, you've got to figure out what it is. And the first thing for me was to understand whether or not I wanted to stay at the bench. And that was huge because once I made that decision, then everything else kind of fell in place. So close to the end of my postdoc, I found that the motivation for getting my PhD had changed. And so I needed a different kind of challenge. But I wanted to use my scientific training and transferable skills in an impactful way. Just, I didn't realize, what it was going to be if I wasn't doing experiments. So I found research development, and here, goodness gracious, you need everything from the scientific training for credibility and for being able to give constructive critiques to applicants on on the grant proposals, but also the interpersonal communication skills, building relationships across all of the organization's levels. So yeah, that was part of how I was able to get from journey from research to research development.
I have one mentor that I've had since my master's degree, but I'm generally independent to a fault. And this is one of the biggest regrets that I've had, is not maybe finding more mentors. I've sort of felt like I could do it all on my own, and people sort of supported me in that. And even my mentor, I didn't really listen to any of the it wasn't that I didn't listen to the guidance, but he was trying to direct me in certain ways, and I always chose different paths. But that being said, with that mentorship relationship, I knew that no matter what I did, I could fall back on to that relationship, and that knowing that gave me the confidence to pursue things and take risks. And at any point, I can reach back to him and say, you know what, I'm doing this. Do you think like I can ask for a letter of reference, or sort of discuss options? And in fact, after having been gone from Winnipeg, which was my hometown, for over 10 years, and having multiple jobs and taken a completely different path, my husband actually got a job here working on Ebola. And so first thing I did when I found out I was moving back, I called him up and we talked about potential options in this area. And he, along with others in my network, were really critical in making this job just sort of appear in front of me. So mentors can really help in that respect.
So I'll just add, I'm still in touch with all three of my mentors, so undergrad, graduate, and postdoc, and they were all very good scientific academic mentors, but none of them could guide me into the path I ended up going, because it wasn't their path. So, but the important thing was my final mentor, my postdoc mentor, I was able to be honest with him and explain, that I was going to take a different track, and he was open to me finding ways to make myself, a good candidate to enter that field. And he was understanding that I wanted to do workshops that NIH was offering and take a project management course and things like that. And I was fortunate that I could be honest with him, and he was understanding and enabled me to do that. I know not every trainee has that luxury, depending on your mentor relationship. I think the key thing is finding that person in your history that maybe would be able to help you and provide you with some guidance if your current mentor can't provide that. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, and real quick, I wanted to jump on what was just said. I think that's a great point, because I sometimes think people lose focus on only finding a mentor, but the mentor can't check all the boxes of what's really needed. And so finding somebody who can mentor you and give you advice, but also somebody who can push you to the next level of your career, and that person could be a sponsor or an advocate who might be working in an area you're interested in, and can open the door for you to get in, or can connect you with other people who can get you to where you want to be. So I always give the advice of don't get stuck on just having that one perfect person who can mentor you and check all the boxes, because that I don't think is feasible. And it's important to make sure you're finding people you can work with who can help you in every facet that you're looking for, and can help you get to where you want to go next.
So I think we all can agree that at some point or another, mentorship is very important and paramount to who we essentially become with our career, even in our personal lives. So we have a lot of attendees on this call, and I think that it would be fair to receive some questions from them. Uli, do you have any questions for us from the attendees?
Many of them. Two that are the foremost ones. I think is do you as panelists think that a postdoc is actually required to do the positions that you're in, to apply for them? And then a second one, and I'm just going to throw it out there because it's almost as often asked, is what kind of things can you do while you are in a postdoc to prepare yourself and to get the skills and the opportunity to apply for positions that you are currently having?
Well, I can jump. For me, I don't know if the postdoc itself is required. I would say yes, beyond the PhD. Definitely like a high level of science comprehension is required for my job. And I certainly think the postdoc helps, but that's not enough to be really successful in this position. Most of the people at my university in this position, this wasn't the first job that they had outside of their postdoc. They had other experience, both in academic positions as well as in industry. And myself included, I was an adjunct professor at Hood College. I was a managing editor with the American Chemical Society, and I had done contract work in science communications with a company in Maryland called Ripple Effect that did contract work for NIH. And so for me, the science is critical because it gives me that credibility with working with the researchers and the confidence to say, I know what I'm talking about. But all the skill sets that I had in all of my other positions, I use in my current job, namely science communications, a lot of website design skills I picked up along the way as well. And my position I sort of created, and so I created it with the skill set that I have. And you know, that's a luxury I had, but a lot of the business acumen I gained through some of my other jobs, which offered certificate courses for their employees to help them to develop those skill sets.
So I'll just state for my particular position, I don't think it was a requirement, but in my case, I think I wouldn't have gotten the job without it, and I think that's an important distinction, right? A lot of it depends on what those other experiences you have under your belt. Coming out of my PhD, I hadn't developed any soft skills. I mean, I could converse scientifically and write scientifically, but soft skills, interacting with other people that aren't scientists, learning how to put together a budget, learning how to deal with contracts and dealing with people in project management, and understanding what it means to work with key stakeholders. Those are all things that I was able to do during my postdoc because you kind of have a better understanding. You're not just focused on your research, you're able to think bigger and think about, okay, what are the other things I can do to contribute to this field that aren't just me at the bench, doing the actual experiments. So it all depends on what you've done during your PhD. You could probably get those experiences if you have the foresight to do them. I did not have that. So I think it really depends in each individual person's case.
Yeah, that postdoc is where I actually got a lot of the transferable skills and really honed them. And anything you can do leadership-wise, from organizing a scientific retreat to graduate student research day, or so for me specifically, I had one that there was a brown bag lunch seminar series that I helped put together. And then from that, the networking from that actually got me into detail at NIEHS in the scientific review branch. And that was critical. I mean, it not only helped me hone my my skills, but also helped me to really solidify the decision to leave the bench. And for me, that was critical. But it gave me the confidence to know that I could do something more impactful and not have to be doing experiments. There are other things out there. So yeah, I would just recommend capitalize on any opportunity to do something outside of the lab if you can.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and something that I was going to say as well. Just finding different things that you can do to, really test yourself to see what your interests are, and any new skills that you're interested in learning. And I think once you start to do that, it'll really help you to build a plethora of skills that you can pull from when you're building your resume, for any job you might be interested in. I don't think you need to just learn certain skills for a particular job. I think you could learn skills in general and then make them useful into something that makes you a very strong candidate for the job you're applying to. And I also want to piggyback off of what Chris said. For my position, the postdoc helped, but it wasn't necessary. So I think, when you're thinking of making a next step of moving from grad school to postdoc or grad school right into Indish or to starting your career path, it's important just to do some informational interviews or just kind of look at the trajectory of the people who work there currently or have been there in the past to see if pursuing a postdoc might make you a stronger candidate. It could affect your pay grade. It could affect your ability for promotion. So I think all those have to go into consideration, when thinking about, is a postdoc the right step for you?
I'd just like to piggyback on that with one additional comment. Is I remember being a postdoc, and particularly being a postdoc at NIH, where there are like thousands of other postdocs and they're all amazing. And you're thinking, well, how can I compete with these people for academic jobs? So I better find another job. And then you're being told in things like Nature publications that, oh, it's a waste of a time to do a postdoc if you're going for another career path, and that you're losing all of these years of higher pay by doing your postdoc. And it really puts sort of a negative spin on the postdoc if you're not pursuing an academic career. And I think that's a really unfortunate thing, because the postdoc isn't going anywhere. It's a valuable time in your life to take advantage of all the opportunities. One of the things I did while as a postdoc was chaired the NIAID Fellows Advisory Committee that organized the annual retreat for fellows. And I know others have said that their participation in that committee has helped them to get to where they are now, including a girl I had recruited to the committee. She's, I think, now the deputy director of NHLBI. So these are things that you can take advantage to leverage your career. So don't think that being a postdoc is sitting in place waiting to be an academic.
So yeah, I as a postdoc now resonate with every last one of you. Essentially, I want to play a significant role in the big picture. So that's what really kind of caused me to be interested in moderating the scientific administration panel. One question I do have is, what does it really take to be a scientific administrator? Maybe like your drive, your determination. I know this may be an interesting question for you to think about, but really, what does it take? I know it takes a lot to be a PI. It takes a lot for other career paths, but in particular, what does it take?
I'll start by just saying, I think what you're hearing from everyone is everyone works on a lot of different things at once, so multitasking is obviously a big thing. And really being able to let go, and maybe this isn't true for all the panelists, but for me, you have to be willing to understand that you're not the scientist, you're still a scientist, but you're not the scientist doing the experiment anymore. In my case, we're executing the projects that are, that are developed by other people and making sure the science gets done and managing the science. But you're not that, you lose some of that independence, and you have to be willing to let go of that to an extent. Again, at least in the role that I'm in, and everyone's role is going to be a little different.
Yeah, I would say, in the role that I have, patience, and I guess, for lack of a better way of saying this, creativity of how to overcome working with people who have been doing research for many years, who also have to work with those who are more junior, and making sure that there's team cohesiveness. So having the patience and creativity to overcome those obstacles, but also just the patience of knowing that, if you're going into your position because, like some of us have said, you're trying to have more of a wholesale effect on science itself. It's going to be a while before you see, whatever changes you think you want to see, or the changes that you're looking for. And it's going to be hard to work with those who might not have the same vision as you, but eventually want to get to the same outcome. So just being able to navigate some of the idiosyncrasies of who you work with and your working styles, and just being patient, knowing that you are contributing. You might not see it, you might not have the immediate outcome or immediate effect, but your contributions are building to something that's really great.
For me, I think the two biggest things are resourcefulness and having a thick skin. And resourcefulness, because people come to me with all of their problems, whether they're very tiny problems, like the cut and paste function isn't working on someone's grant submission site, just because they don't know who else to go to, or like massive problems with their, like the design of their research. And so most of the time, I don't have all the answers at my fingertips, but I can find them. And, I use all of the tools that I have to be able to find answers for people quickly, because a lot of that is my role. And the other one is thick skin, because in grant review in particular, my job is to criticize people's work in order to make it better. But ultimately, I take a very critical stance with people, and I send them pages of feedback, and usually I will get a reply back being like, what do you mean? That's what I said. And just, you're criticizing work that they've just poured, months into, perhaps. Their whole life's work has led to this grant proposal, and you tear it apart. So their initial reaction is always horrible. And then you reply with a, very positive tone and explain yourself. And in most cases, I've had so many researchers come back to me and be like, I took all your suggestions, and I really appreciated it. And if I took it personal every time someone got upset with me over critiques, then I don't think I could be in this job.
Yeah, one of the pieces to that is at the end of the day, in our office, the thought is that we want a PI to just do all track changes accepted. And and that's just the greatest feeling in the world. It's like, yes, got that. So, well, and just wanted to add to Kristen's message too about, for me, it was also about getting away from the depth of the research and being able to look at something through the breadth. So in working with investigators across the School of Medicine, I mean, these are hundreds and hundreds of folks who are doing cutting edge science, and they're from many different disciplines and all different backgrounds and all different life stages and everything. And it's a wonderful experience to be able to help them, you know, to help them get the funding that they desperately need to do that great science, to make a difference in public health, right? But there are also many ways to make a difference, and service spirit is one of them. So that's one thing that when I do informational interviews, I make sure that I try to convey it's about being supportive. Our role is to support us getting the funding for all of Duke's research. And in order to do that, you actually have to enjoy, number one, reading, number two, writing and editing. And those aren't really obvious things until you get in the thick of it, because that's a very large portion of what we do. And especially when you're coming from the bench, where you move around, you do your experiments, you know, are interacting with multiple people. A lot of times we have days where we go, you know, morning to night, and all we're doing is staring at a computer, working, and, you know, editing, you know, grant proposals, and, you know, all these red marks across them. You know, it's something that you have to have a thick skin, but you also have to be able to know that, okay, it'll be done at some point soon. But you have to be able to enjoy it, because this is real life. This is the end of it.
Wow. Well, we don't have much time left. I would like to get a few more questions from the audience. Uli, do you have any questions for us?
Yes, two questions come up a lot as well in regards to networking and how do you find positions like yours? The networking is how do you, which goes like sort of hand in hand. How do you, what kind of job descriptions are out there that we need to look for, and how do you network yourself into these positions?
I can start. I have it right on the top of my head. I would go straight to the National Professional Organization for Research Development, which is NORDP, NORDP .org. There are a wealth of resources there, including job announcements, postings, mentor information, and it is a great networking resource, not only getting into the field, but as seasoned veterans within RD.
So I'm going to take a different approach to answering the question. But just when you're thinking about networking and you sort of use the language, how do you network yourself into a position like this? I think that Miley gave a good answer, is, you know, find the appropriate network for that. But sort of my approach to networking is sort of not thinking about it as networking, and using your, so for me, I was always asking people questions, whether it was the postdoc sitting beside me or, you know, someone in my CrossFit gym, or just all those opportunities that you have in life to talk about things and talk about your interests and ask people about their interests. That it's those natural conversations you have in life that are most likely to be the most fruitful. My first job out of NIH, well, actually, almost every job I've had has been gotten through a network, but not like as an active, intentional thing. My first job at Ripple Effect Communications, the owner of the company was from my CrossFit gym. The job I got at Hood College was through someone at my husband's work. Then a headhunter approached me for ACS. And then, as I mentioned before, I leveraged my network of researchers that I knew in Winnipeg and just said, hey, I'm interested in a job in grants and program management. And people talked because they all knew me and they had a vested interest in helping me, and they found me a job. And so it's that natural, you know, put yourself out there, let people know what you're looking for, and you'll find people will want to help you. And that's one thing that I'm always doing is if I see a job and I think it's good for someone, I send it to, like, I'll send them the announcement. And I've gotten quite a few people jobs just by, like, you know, keeping my eyes open for a wide variety of things.
Yeah, so I really like what Kristen said about not looking at networking as trying to just build things. I think we can expand the definition of networking to just, you know, forming relationships with people you find interesting, whether it's their job or a shared activity, and, you know, continuing to build that relationship over time, and you know, leveraging it when you're ready. I think that's a great way of looking at it, and it kind of takes the pressure off wanting to network with the right person, to find the right job at the right time. You know, there was one point where I think it was my first job after college. It was because I met somebody on the bus from Maryland to DC who worked at HHS. We struck up a conversation. I told her my degree from undergrad, and she said, "Oh, I might have something you're interested in." Never met her before in my life, but it's just because we sat next to each other on a bus from Maryland to DC, and that kind of started my trajectory of where I am now, which is an interesting story in and of itself. But yeah, I think by just, you know, meeting different people and not having the pressure of wanting to network, just talking to people, I think can really open a lot of doors for you in the future, and is a really cool way to approach things.
And I'll just quickly add to that. I think everything that's been said has been great. I've heard the phrase informational interviews come up a couple times. That for me was a great tool to network, and it's, you know, it's twofold. It's networking, and, you know, you find out about people who have jobs that you want to learn more about, and you're kind of figuring out what is interesting to you, and just as important, what's not interesting to you. So that'll help narrow down what type of positions you may want to apply for. At the same time, you're expanding your network. You're making those connections with different people who can then put you in contact with more people. And that's really, you know, what it's all about. It's a numbers game. You got to make those connections.
Okay, so in the essence of time, I would like for everyone to just consider or think about one thing that they would like to leave to the audience. We only have a few more minutes, and I think that it'd be very inspirational or thoughtful for all of the audience, even myself, to consider just one thing that you can leave. You left a lot of information, but I know there's something you can just think about that give you even the drive and the passion and the desire, or just something that might encourage the listeners.
So I guess I could go first, and I'll say something that's a little outside of the box. But you know, find yourself a hobby, something that you really love to do, something that will take you away from everyday life, help you build creativity, help you build confidence, help you find happiness, and just, you know, put you in a different space. I find for me, my hobby is reading, fiction, nonfiction, everything in between, and you know, I find that when I do that, I'm able to remove myself from the current stresses of life, whether it's personal life or work. And then when I'm reintroduced into that environment, I have a new perspective, I have a new drive, I have renewed energy. So I think by finding a hobby and allowing yourself time to reconnect with who you are and to do different things allows you to be a better person at your job and in other areas.
I'll jump in. So the one thing I've sort of thought has been eye-opening to me throughout my career is you can love the concept of your job and still be unhappy with the work, and vice versa. You can not really love the concept of your job and be super happy. So in my last job, the idea and on paper, it should have been the best job for me. But the actual execution of that wasn't satisfying to me. And that sort of goes back to what Miley had said. You have to like what you're doing, you know, the actual tasks that you're going to be doing. You have to like reading and you have to like editing. Or if you're playing, you know, a role in business development, you have to like, you know, approaching businesses and making propositions and having those kinds of interactions. If you don't like that, you're probably not going to be successful, even if it seems conceptually like it's a, you know, what you think makes a great job. And so a couple other things matter as well, like the work environment, the people that you're working with. That could make a dream job, you know, not what you want, or it could take a job that's maybe not quite where you want to be and make it the best place to be in the world. And right now, like for me, this position isn't necessarily where I want to be 10 years from now, but for me right now, it's fantastic. I enjoy the work. It's interesting. It's not all consuming all the time. And I have a toddler. So it allows me at this moment in my life to have that balance that Shakira was just talking about. And just because I'm doing this right now doesn't mean I can't change career paths. I feel that the position I'm in right now sets me up to do a wide range of jobs, and so you know, don't feel stuck wherever you are. There's always that opportunity to grow.
My thoughts are very similar to yours, Kristen, and Shakira as well. We have to be good to ourselves. Be sure to take care of yourself and know that what you're doing is what you want to be doing. And if you don't, you're going to have to figure it out. No one can do it for you. But also know that everything happens for a reason. You know, everything you do in your life prepares you for everything else. And lastly, resilience is key. There are a lot of things that are going to go wrong. You know, things aren't going to work out. The science doesn't work out, or your plan for this grand job you don't get, or whatever. But it all works out, and it's good.
I think I'll just add, you know, if I'm going to give you a piece of advice that I took when I was doing my postdoc, or if you're a graduate student, don't be siloed by your research. Force yourself outside of that comfort zone of doing your work and explore other areas where you can contribute. Take a project management course, take an intellectual property course, a business course. It'll open you up to how you may be interested in these things that you didn't know you were interested in. It'll expose you to these other fields, tell you what you like, what you don't like, and it's a course, it's a resume booster. So I think it's a win-win. So just force yourself to do, you know, at least one or two of these other things to see what else is out there.
All right, well, we'd like to thank the panelists for your insight and this opportunity to sit down and speak to you virtually. And I really appreciate everything that you offered to us today. I will turn it back over to Lori.
Wow, what a great panel. You guys had some really great topics on mentoring and getting your foot in the door and taking care of yourself. So we really appreciate that. And your jobs are all fascinating. So I wanted to point out a few more things for those of you who are online. We will be working on the questions through some kind of AI function and we'll get those to you next week. There's a ton of other panels on our YouTube site that probably are similar but different. So there's a panel on careers in science policy, careers in government, careers in science communications, science education and outreach careers, tech transfer, and consulting and strategy. So that all have similar types of themes to what you guys talked to today. So I encourage you to go to the YouTube page. And last but not least, don't forget about Twitter. We have a chat today at 4 o'clock and also just all kinds of information that happens there. So panelists, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to see all of you. So we're going to say adieu to everyone and goodbye and do the wave, right?
All right.
Yeah.
You.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.